Yo, welcome in to another edition of Preferred Lines. This is a podcast where we talk about golf gambling. We're going to go through this week the AT&T Byron Nelson. Excuse me real quick. I'm just getting the YouTube link out there for people. If you are joining us here via Twitter, thank you. Happy to have you once again. I know a lot of you guys join in every week. Feel free to drop a comment, a like, a subscribe. All that stuff is of great help to me, and I genuinely appreciate it. So feel free to do so. On tap for this week, like always, we're going to start with a course preview. I'm going to go through a little bit of TPC Craig Ranch, some of the Cliff Notes, quick version there, some key stats. I have a special guest joining me to go all the way through the odds board that I'm excited to talk to. I'm going to wrap things up kind of with my best bet. Do a little Q&A. So if you have any questions, please. Also, if you are on the YouTube page, I am still giving away free Preferred Line swag. I got some t-shirts. Drop a comment on the video. Leave your Twitter handle in there. I'd be happy to send you a free t-shirt for those of you willing to support the podcast. It is always greatly appreciated. I have a couple of great sponsors as well I'm going to touch on a little bit later in the show. So I appreciate you guys. Make sure to leave your Twitter handle in there too, so I know where to contact you and reach out via DM so that I can get your address and all that good stuff. Speaking of sponsors, Fantasy Points, PGA, up in the top right corner, you see their logo there. I am a proud member of their media group. They do an awesome job providing PGA DFS content, projections, optimizers. They have an incredible group of sort of content creators over there that are putting stuff out there, not only for free, but behind a paywall for subscribers. You can use the promo code LINES22. We'll get you 10% off your monthly subscription there. I believe they have weekly, maybe yearly as well. But they're continuing to roll out just a bunch of good stuff. So we appreciate them. They appreciate us. I'm happy to bring on a guest who's a member of their team here in just a minute. But before we do so, I'm going to go through a quick little preview here of TPC Craig Ranch. Here we go. McKinney, Texas. TPC Craig Ranch par 72 golf course, 7,468-yard Tom Weiskopf design. Bent grass greens like last week, but we're going to see Zoysia fairways, which you're going to hear a lot, which are a little bit of a unique surface. Last year was the first time this event was played at this new home location at Craig Ranch, where K.H. Lee at a big number long shot, my type of event, won at 25 under par, where he edged out Samuel Burns. Cut line, -6. Holy crap. You're going to have to go really low here. I know last year had very favorable conditions. I'm not sure if we're quite expecting that this year, but the course just sets up for birdie opportunities and guys to go out there and play it a la Corn Ferry Tour type event, where you just go out there and you try to shoot as many birdies as humanly possible. Burns, I mentioned him last year, shot the course record of a 62, tying Ryan Palmer's unofficial course record there. Burns obviously did that in tournament play. Some quick notes: 6 widest fairways on tour. And that, I think, is more important and emphasized because of the sort of Zoysia fairway. So you don't quite get as much roll on this type of grass. So those already wide fairways are actually play even wider. So it's really sort of a bomber's paradise, which is a quote from Bryson DeChambeau heading into this event last year. Now, I know the leaderboard necessarily didn't speak to that last year, but if you listen to some of the quotes from the players before that event, as you listen to some of the quotes leading into this week, I think it's important to keep tabs on that. The guys who really hit it far love it here. Second easiest last year in terms of strokes gained around the green. The greens and regulation percentage was incredibly high. I think somewhat assisted by those softer conditions. Water in play on 13 holes. As I mentioned, Weiskopf TPC design. To me, I haven't heard this a whole lot, but that screams waste management to me and Phoenix. I've heard a lot of TPC Southwinds. I think because of the Zoysia comparisons, I think Eastlake has those type of fairways as well. Played as the 5th easiest course on tour last year. As I mentioned, you're going to need a lot of birdies, and this could turn in to John Rahm's favorite, a piece of shit putting contest. But we'll see. We got 1 week until the second major of the season. Key stats for the week. Here's what I'm looking at: ball striking, par 5 scoring. This is what I got in the model: strokes gained total on easy scoring conditions and opportunities gained on easy scoring conditions. So one thing that I do think is helpful is pull those two stats, right? And when you're making a model in Fantasy National or wherever you use, pull those two stats with easy scoring conditions, and then take those same two stats and filter it out for hard scoring conditions. And what that would allow you to do when you pull those four together is see players that separate themselves and tend to play better on Birdie Fest on these type of conditions. I think that that's helpful just to understand players that are favor a really tough, difficult test, and players that favor a course where you can go out there and play super, super aggressive, and you don't have to worry about making bogey and par as much. It's just go out there, stick it as close as you can, make the putt. Birdie or better rates, driving distance, like I mentioned, I'm going to factor in heavily. I'll ask our guest here in a second, and putting. Without further ado, let's kick it to the odds board. I'm proud and happy and thrilled to welcome in a good friend of mine and guest to the show this week. He is a member of the team over at Fantasy Points PGA, who is, a supporter of this show. We're happy to have him on here to talk to us more about that and the odds boards. Welcome to Preferred Lines, my man Hunter Vaness at Huntman10 on Twitter. What's up, dude?
Not much, Joe. Thanks for having me on, man. Yeah, I think I've been a fan of the Preferred Lines show for over a year now. Big shout out to Chad, and I love what you two have been doing for a long time now. You two are definitely the two kings of content on Twitter for sure. So really appreciate you having me on here, and I'm pumped to talk about the odds board.
Dude, I appreciate that. A professional in the making yourself, keeping yourself muted backstage, popping that in. So you do the show on Mondays, kind of early, like a little bit earlier in the evening. Talk to us a little bit about that. Plug that show. Tell us where we can find more of your stuff over at Fantasy Points before we dig into the board here.
Yeah, for sure. So at Fantasy Points, I do a early tea time live show, which is the name of it. It's a early Monday, course preview. It goes along with my course preview and event preview article on Fantasy Points. I highlight really a lot of what you said in about 5 minutes, but I go a little more in depth, I guess. I think you hit everything perfectly. Like you said, the Cliff Notes version of the course this week, but that's kind of what I talk about on the show. Again, just the course in general, key stats, of course. We look at the field just at a glance. Try and do maybe a first look at DraftKings salaries too, because they're usually released a few hours before the show too. So very similar to what you do here. I know you do a lot of the betting stuff. I try and do a little more DFS side too, and I know we kind of intertwine both of those at times too. So yeah, really excited to keep going with Fantasy Points. I love what they're doing out there, and yeah, like I said, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, they're making a huge push. To be quite frankly, on the course preview stuff, I tend to piggyback off guys like you, Andy, PGA Tout, these guys that put a ton of research and emphasis in. My research, like it boils down to what I keep is a Google Drive document that I've had going for about 4 years. And what I'll do is after every tournament, I'll jot down like 8 or 9 or 10 notes about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's relevant and sometimes it's not. So a course where we're relatively new and we don't have a whole lot of information besides 1 year, I really kind of rely on you guys. And then I basically plagiarize and copy and paste and regurgitate it here on this show. But that being said, let's get to the odds board for the Byron Nelson. At the top, Hunter, we've got Scotty Scheffler on the top of the odds board for maybe the first time. I can't remember what he was coming into the Masters, but I believe maybe Rahm or Thomas were slightly ahead of him.
Yeah.
He's at 10-1. Then we get Justin Thomas. We get a good field this week. I think primarily because of Southern Hills being next week and players trying to get some reps in that we haven't seen a whole lot on. DJ there at 22, I believe, is the best number. Jordan Spieth, Samuel Burns, Will Zalatoris, Xander Brooks, all good players. Any leans for you kind of up top there?
Yeah, so I don't know about you, I guess, but I tend to stay away from the 10-1, 12-1. Those are more DFS plays for me. I'm not really betting in golf for 10-1 plays, I guess. That's just my personal preference. What about you? I guess I'll ask you that first.
Yeah, so I'm 100% that same way, but this week, I don't know, man. So I actually have pulled the trigger on someone in this range, and it's steeper than I normally ever go. Those of you who follow the show will notice that I typically don't start until 25 to 1. I kind of think this is Justin Thomas's week to notch a victory. And the reason that I say that is I do have a lot of question marks around the other guys in this field that I don't necessarily have about JT in terms of reps, in terms of form, in terms of motivation. Those three factors, I really think that he's on the precipice of victory and he feels that. And not that it's adding necessarily a pressure to it, I think it's just adding incentive for him because he knows that it's been a little while. He knows that he's close. And I think this presents a good opportunity. Spieth just got that victory. DJ had the wedding. Brooks had the bachelor party pre-wedding. Xander had the team event. Like, there's a lot of things. We haven't seen Scotty in a little while. Is he really going to win every time that he tees it up? A lot of these question marks around these other names, I feel like he could separate. And one of the other things I looked at, I mentioned it earlier in the show, when you sort the strokes gain data by easier golf courses, he's really sort of separated himself as of late. He's actually fairly long off the tee, surprisingly, longer than DJ,
Yeah.
longer than Brooks, longer than Xander, longer than Scotty right now in terms of driving distance, longer than Zalatoris. I had him 12th, I believe, overall in the field. I
Yep.
just think a lot of things set up well for him. And I'm going to kind of break my normal mold and go up and reach for a Justin Thomas 12 to 1.
I like that. I've really been going off of the narrative of where our players, motivations this week, especially since it's an event before a major. But that was really the only thing I was considering. I didn't dive that deep into it, like you said, with the weddings. And you mentioned it too. I mean, JT hasn't had a win yet this year. So it's been a while since he's been in that winner's circle, since he's raised a trophy too. So I like JT quite a bit. 12 to 1, that's usually what we see it for JT, unless he's been playing terrible, but you don't don't really want to play him at, when he's been in a bad form, of course, too. So I like JT. Yeah, you're right. 12th in driving distance. You mentioned it earlier. I do think driving distance will play in quite a bit.
Do
I
you?
think,
Okay. I'm glad to
yeah,
hear it.
yeah. I just think it's kind of similar to what we saw a couple weeks ago at Vidanta for the
Hmm.
Mexico Open. It just wide open fairways. There's not a whole lot of issues off the tee. Yeah, there's water on, I think, 13 holes. The rough is about 2.5 inches long. So that's a little penalizing, but not as bad as last week, of course. So I do
Right.
think distance will, definitely be an advantage. Just because, again, these fairways are pretty wide open, and I'll definitely be factoring that in quite a bit too. So yeah, I like JT quite a bit. What about Scheffler, I guess? I mean, I know, what are your concerns with him? And I mean, if you're going to bet one at one of these two numbers, of course, what makes you
I
take
know.
JT over him?
And this is like such a stupid narrative, Hunter, but I'm like, and I usually don't buy into this. Like, Chad was big on this team of like, once you win, the candle, like the flame, goes out. And it's like so hard, and so many things have to go your way in order to notch victory on the PGA Tour, that how could you possibly have every one of those things work in your favor again? That said, he's on such a scorching hot run right now after winning the Masters. I hate to do too much of the mentality and narrative thing, but he's been doing the sort of green jacket circuits on the late night shows and the
Mhm.
ballparks and the throwing out the first pitch and all these type of things and enjoying himself, which he should.
Yeah.
Is it a great golf course for him? Yes. I think long term, he's probably around, if you could have one for the next 5 years, I would still take Justin Thomas. I just think that his consistency is there. I worry about his putting, but ultimately, he's probably the best ball striker in the field. I have him ranked second overall. I actually have Zalatoris ranked slightly ahead of him, but he's doing everything really well. The opportunities are there, second there, third in stroke gain total on easy courses, top 5 in par 5 scoring. A lot of things really align for me. And it's just a matter of, can Scotty really do it again?
This is why you're really good, Joe, because you bring up random like talking points, like long year or long term, 5-year look ahead between JT and Scheffler. I think why I'm leaning Scheffler is because I've been on the opposite end and I've been thinking the same way as what you've been saying there is there's no way he can keep winning. And I said that
Yeah.
after the Waste Management and he goes out and wins at the API, right?
Yep.
The match play that was a little more predictable, I guess, since he's playing in Texas. But that's kind of why I'm leaning towards Scheffler is because of that Texas narrative, of course, and it's a good fit for him too. I mean, both of these guys are going to rank amazingly, depending on regardless of what stat you look at. Of course, they've been playing really well over the last 24 rounds in general. Scheffler, of course, first in strokes gained total. He's ninth in tee to green, ninth in putting as well. And I guess that is one thing, that I could use as maybe a reason to fade him too. But um, I don't know. I guess I'd take Scheffler. I guess we can have a smaller one-on-one bet between the two there. But I I don't know. That's a good toss up between the two. I think.
It is a really good toss up, and I think like I love Scotty. I just I, I I don't know. I think it's just Justin Thomas's time. I keep coming back to like full motivation for Thomas, and I heard him on our buddies over on Be Right when he was on there, and he was like, "It's close." You could tell it's frustrating for him that he hasn't won, and that can work negatively and impact you, and it can also work positively. I don't think it's gotten to the point where it's been 3 or 4 years since he won, and now it's this huge heavy monkey on his back. I think it's to the point where he's uber motivated right now. And I just wonder, is it possible for Scotty to match that level of motivation, basically achieving his life's dreams? Like everything is going his way, everything is going so perfectly. Do you have the same desire to win and to put in the effort and to put in the practice before? That's my only concern. Is it valid? It's yet to be seen.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, like I said, I just have so many scars from thinking that way that I've kind of flipped my switch and said, I kind of have to play him now. Like I'm not gonna fade him anymore because he's just burned me so many times by thinking there's no way he can win at Augusta now, right?
I know.
so, we'll see. I
What
guess.
about
Go ahead.
like, all right, Brooks is my guy through and through. I'm not going to bet him this week. And I think it's a valid number at 35 to 1 on a course with wide open fairways that has a bomber narrative. I have seen him hit that Srixon driver better at times. He looks perfectly balanced. I think it's close to clicking. I'm just my concern with Brooks is if it's going to be 22 under par, those aren't the type of tournaments he really wins on a consistent basis. And I think that it's more for him as a tune up to sort of get his game right for Southern Hills, where he's gearing up from. And I know that he's hasn't afforded himself the luxury to continue to think like that. He could think like that 3 years ago. No longer. It's been a year and a half since he won, and it was a long time before then. He should be preparing for every tournament to win, but I still have those concerns, and I'm actually willing to pass on this 35 to 1 number. What do you see out of like Brooks, out of Xander, out of Zalatoris? I'll even lump in there guys who it's been a while since they had victory for Zalatoris ever.
Yeah.
Do you like any of them this week to sort of get off the quote unquote schneid?
Yeah, well, starting with Zalatoris, I guess I think he's going to be the chalk bet, the chalk DFS play from Dallas. I believe he said he's played this course hundreds of times. I think he said that last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough for me to see him getting to minus 25, minus 20 even. I think a decision that we have to make, as bettors before is where do we see this, winning score ending up? Do we think the wind is, I mean, what do you think? I guess, do you think the wind is going to play much of a factor? I don't think it was that windy last year, and I know it was wet beforehand as well. Do you think the winning score will be closer to minus 15 or again closer to that minus 25 side?
Probably, or I would say like 21, 22. I mean, it's going to get up there. The wind looks a little bit up on Thursday, but the rest of the time it's totally down. The thing, Hunter, when like these tournaments start to get to 20 is it brings a lot more guys into play. Like this is where you see KH Lee win. This is where you see all of these guys, JJ Spawn and these guys pop up kind of out of nowhere and get these victories. when it's 10 under par as a winning score, believe it or not, it actually separates the players at the top. And I feel like it gives them an added little bump because it demands precision, it demands accuracy. And where these guys separate themselves is very minute, and it's on the ball striking, it's on the approach, it's on windy conditions, a difficult approach shot from 200 yards away, and you've got to hit a 5-iron there into the wind and get it to stick on the green. That's where Thomas and DJ and these guys sort of separate themselves from the KH Lees of the world. When everyone's hitting the fairway and everyone's hitting the green, and it comes down to who holds the most 15 to 20 foot putts on the week, I just think it brings a whole lot more guys into contention. And I like, to your point, I don't think those conditions are ideal for Will Zalatoris trying to get his first victory. I don't think those conditions are ideal for Xander, who really leans on that ball striking when he's at his best, or even Brooks to a degree, who grinding out par is important to Brooks. That is his strength. When a lot of players have to get up and down and find a way to maintain focus in tough conditions and grind out par, I love him there. When it's go out there and it's shoot at pins and it's basically play 4 days of a Monday qualifier type attitude and mindset, it just brings these guys, a lot more guys into the fold.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it will be tougher conditions. I mean, tougher. It's still a pretty easy course than last year. But I mean, if you look at KH Lee, I was looking at his stats. I mean, he really was almost perfect last year. I think
Yeah.
he was 65 in the first two rounds, 66, 67 positive. I think he was like top 20 in all those major stat categories that we always bring up. So I think the second was Sam Burns at minus 22. I think we'll see closer to that, especially if it's a little windier. It's a little, little firmer as well.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, but you're right. I don't, for that reason alone, that's why I'm kind of avoiding most of this range. I'll give you a name, the same odds at Brooks. I kind of like Hideki Matsuyama this week.
Okay.
He's literally positive in almost every stat category. There's no red on his fantasy national you know, profile in general, at least through the last 24 rounds. I know he's been dealing with I believe the neck injury, right? But
Mhm.
I think he's motivated in this event to go out and play well. I know you could say it's a tune-up, but and like you said too, when we think of guys who bogey avoidance players, I kind of think of Hideki, but he also ranks really well in birdies or better over the last 24 rounds. I think he's top 5 in that category too. So that really surprised
Yes.
me as well. Um, he ranks well in a lot of different categories that I've been looking at for key stats. You mentioned a few of them, of course. Approach is going to be big, and ball striking on these birdie fest too. But he ranks in the top 5 in proximity from 200 plus. I think like I said, top 5 in birdie or better percentage, top 5 in approach, tee to green in the last 24 rounds. So I like Hideki, and I think I'm more attracted to this number more than anything. If he was like, let's say he played, last week even, and he finished inside the top 20, wouldn't we see closer to 20-1 instead of this 35-1 number?
Yeah, 100%. And you know what? I think if he didn't have the flare up at the players, we'd be seeing closer to 25 as well. 14th at the Masters wasn't all that bad considering he bled a lot out putting.
Yeah.
20th at the Arnold Palmer before that. Top 10 at Phoenix, obviously one at Sony, obviously one at Zozo, both sort of throughout the early season. So he's on quite a little run. I really like that a lot. And when I did my sort of sorting on opportunities game, which is basically a stat on Fantasy National that's telling you, for you guys out there, how many good birdie looks these guys are giving themselves. 8th in the field in terms of opportunities gained on easy scoring conditions on golf course. Some guys that aren't good, Spieth 97th, DJ 80th, Brooks 138. Zalatoris 92 to your point. So on these tournaments that really demand that you're going to have a lot of shorter irons in, and it's just stick them close and give yourself good looks on greens that are easy to hit. Hideki has fared very well there.
Yeah, I like that. And like I said, probably more of an attractive number to me.
Yeah,
I'm not
great.
going to hammer it by any means, but yeah, I like that quite a bit. And like you said, with all these guys, motivation's up in the air with a lot of them. I think he's looking at this event as he doesn't have to, but he's looking to play well he wants a good, result going into next week's PGA Championship, trying to add another major to his belt. So he's just played so well since his Masters win last year. I didn't think that he was really much of a birdie scorer, especially before the Masters win, but he's gotten in the upper teens. Minus 16, I think, in his second place finish at Memphis last year. So he can get up there if he needs to. But
Yes, Sony played great in that final round, especially that back nine, made a ton of birdies there as well. So, kind of keeping it moving throughout this
yeah,
sort of 35 to let's say 55 range. I'm going to name some just odds here before I ask you your take on them. Joaquin Neiman is 35 to 1. Haven't heard much on him this week. Taylor Gooch is 45 to 1 over at DraftKings. Kokrak 50 to 1, one in Texas, either through the fall or last year. I'm not sure. Tommy Fleetwood, 50 to 1, has been playing good. Aaron Wise had a little turnaround, 55 to 1. Hadwin's been playing good, 55 to 1. Jason Day played pretty good for 2 rounds last week at 55 to 1. Has played well in Texas before. Johnny Vegas, 55 to 1. Our guy here in the chat, Five or Cinco's Dave, said all I heard you say was Vegas, Vegas, Vegas when I was talking about the course preview. Yeah, he sets up really well. Obviously, came back from the injury last week and played awesome. Mav McNeely is another one, 55 to 1. Any names in there, Hunter, that got your attention?
definitely. I got a couple here, and I'll ask your opinion on this narrative when I'm done here. I'm kind of riding off the narrative of guys who aren't currently in the PGA Championship next week for a couple reasons. One, they get that automatic bid right to play next week. We saw JJ Spawn do it a month ago, and he got that automatic bid to the Masters after his Valero Texas win. But I also think like they're looking at this week knowing they have a week off next week too. Like there's no reason to hold it back this week by any means. And they're also, I mean, Vegas is my first one that I'll talk about. And Aaron Wise, they haven't won in a while, like you said, with Justin Thomas. And I just think they're really looking for a win here, especially again to ride that narrative that I was talking about. So, again, first one that I like is Vegas at 55 to 1. He finished ninth here last year. And he was positive in every stat category at TPC Craig Ranch last year. And I just think that he fits this course really well. Overall, he's first in strokes gained on par fives, sixth in approach, 15th in ball striking, sixth in birdies or better, and just 10th in overall strokes gained, too. So, again, he's not in the PGA Championship. I think he's got that little extra incentive to perform well and hopefully get that invite next week. And he's also a University of Texas alum, too. So, he's played these Texas courses before. He's definitely no stranger to Texas golf by any means. So, I said it on my show. He fits that trifecta that I'm looking for. Not playing next week. He has a really good course fit. He's playing pretty well, and he's from Texas, or he's went to college in Texas too. So he fits this the area as well. So I like Johnny Vegas. I will likely have him on my card. I think 55 to 1, not a bad number by any means, in my opinion. What do
Yeah,
you
I
think of
think he
Vegas?
sets up great in a lot of the stat models. I love that narrative. Because here's why: for a lot of these guys that aren't in and are maybe middle, let's call them middle tier PGA Tour players, the PGA Championship's the one you can really win, I think.
Yeah.
And especially for a lot of these guys, like US Opens are going to be won by the best players. Masters, there's such an emphasis on, first of all, getting in is difficult. And second, if you are in, there's such an advantage to being a guy that is regularly there. Um, Look at last year. I mean, Phil won at 250 to 1. Jimmy Walker's won. Jason Duffner, Y.E. Yang, Keegan Bradley. These are all like sort of very middle tier career PGA Tour players who have gotten that major at the PGA Championship. This is within the last 10 years. So very much, I know Brooks has 2 in there, but for the most part, you can really see these long shots kind of take advantage. And the more that I dive into Southern Hills, I think a lot of guys are going to be in play next week. We'll, of course, get to that then.
Yeah.
But love that narrative of a guy like Vegas who's playing really well and has extra motivation to get into a major championship where he could potentially really make a splash for his career.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm all over Vegas this week. Like I said, it just fits the course really well, and he's been trending so well over the last year, even before his ninth place finish here at TPC Craig Ranch. He's just been trending upward, and he's been around. He's had some top 10 finishes in the last year. I think it'd be really cool to see him win and get that bid into the PGA next week.
Yeah, moving down the list here, you see Seamus Power, Cameron Champ there at 55 to 1. Getting into the 60s, we've got Davis Riley. Davis Riley right there with Adam Scott. Wow, how that's sort of changed. Alex Noren, Eric Van Rooyen, Mark Leishman, Siwoo Kim, who I believe used to be a member here. Bubba, who's sort of on his way out to the Live Tour here soon. Brian Harmon, who's playing really well. Here's a guy who I bet. I took a 60, and there's a 66 out there now that you can see, but I got Mark Leishman, man. I just think that Leishman's ball striking numbers have actually been pretty solid. I got him 37th in the field, and his opportunities gain and strokes gain total on easy golf courses get a nice little bump. So he's 13th in one and 10th in strokes gain total on easy golf courses. I just have a feeling this week that it's a decent number on Leash, who I think is playing a little bit better than a lot of people would recognize. 21st actually played this event last year and finished 21st, gained 2.6 on approach in that event. And he's had some good runs through Texas. I know Texas has a lot of comparisons to sort of the Aussie narratives with the wind, but he has 2 third-place finishes at this event back at the Byron Nelson when it was back at TPC Los Colinas, and a second at the Byron Nelson when it was at Trinity Forest. So I know those are different courses, still the same sort of region, still the same time of the year in May in Texas, in those sort of similar conditions. And he's finished, 3 top threes there. So while it's a different course, I still think this sets up equally well for him. And Leishman can be wild off the tee. So I think these extra wide fairways can only sort of help him tee it up nice and then fairways on that zoysia grass for him. And hopefully he has one of those weeks where he scrambles his butt off, chips 1 or 2 in, and makes a lot of putts.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's another number for a guy with a lot of win equity, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You like you said, he's been great tee to green over the last few events. He was pretty decent at Wells Fargo as well. He gained on approach. He just had that terrible hole where yeah, you know what I'm talking about, where
Yeah,
he
yeah,
hit in
yeah.
the bunker and the water and all that. I think he
Yeah.
lost almost all of his strokes on around the green on that hole alone. So if you take that out, I think you don't have the miscut from last week. He's got a lot of top 30 finishes. He's been playing well this year. He's gained on approach almost every event. So yeah, I like the Leishman play. And again, that's another attractive number for a guy with a lot of win equity.
Yeah, just keeping it moving down the board. Starting at 80 to 1, you get Lanto Griffin, you get Matt Kuchars, who's on a decent little run here. I hear has a lot of course history as well. Sebastian Munoz, Sepp Straka there at 80, Keith Mitchell at 80, Mito Pereira, who was going to be very popular before he pulled out a couple of weeks ago. You can get from 65 to 1 at DraftKings all the way to 90 to 1. Which book is this? This is Bet365, who has a lot of the best numbers this week as well, if you have access there. Then we start to get to 100 to 1 guys. Anyone, and you can even stretch it to 100 to 1 if you want Hunter and above. Any guy down here that's kind of caught your eye?
For sure, yeah. A couple here. Kurt Kitiyama, I think he's 110 to 1. I think that's gone down quite a bit.
He's playing
Um,
awesome.
yeah, he's just been playing so well, and he matches a lot of the stats that we've been talking about. Great from 200 plus yards on approach. He's a really great birdie or better scorer as well. A lot of the courses that we've seen over the last few weeks have been long and have required players to use long irons on approach. So same thing this week here at TPC Craig Ranch. I think Kitayama is a great bet. I think he's going to be a chalky DFS play. I'd love that. Do you ever like fade guys in DFS and then bet them in outrights to kind of, I don't want to say hedge, but avoid the chalk and not have to worry about it?
Yeah, sometimes I'm kind of weird in DFS though, where I don't like I don't put as much emphasis on chalk and ownership in
Yeah.
DFS. Like if I think a guy is going to play well, I'll play him. Whether he's 25% owned or 15% owned, I know that there's certain contests where that game theory can really sort of trickle in, but
Yeah.
we're just speaking from a personal perspective where I've had success in DFS and where I've had a couple of big victories. I didn't factor that in at all. And I ate some of the biggest chalk of the week, and those guys ended up playing well because to me, I feel like if I have a strong opinion on someone and everything's telling me to take him, whether 1 in every 4 people take him or 1 in every 6 people take him, doesn't really matter if that guy ultimately plays as well as I think he's going to.
Yeah. But no, you bring up a good point. And that's the worst too, is when you fade someone because of ownership, even though you had a great feeling on them all
Yeah.
week. So, yeah, I like that. But sorry,
Like Cam Young last week, like, I
yeah,
think everyone I mean, he was extremely popular in betting, and everyone rushed to get the 40-1 number, and there were a lot of people that ended up fading him in DFS because of the ownership, which was very high because he was a
yeah,
great price, but he was a great price for a reason. He's it's a perfect it was a great course fit for him. He's been playing awesome. It's his region of the country. It's his
yeah,
type of surfaces that he's familiar with. And the guy storms and finishes third. So everyone who didn't take him at whatever was he 8 grand flat or whatever the price was that was
yeah.
super cheap, missed out. So it's like there's too many of those for me to ignore and sort of totally duck the ownership.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, you could go drive yourself crazy by just thinking about that too much. So I'm with you.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Anyone else in this sort of hundreds that you like?
yep. Kitiyama, like I said, Munoz is less than 100. I kind of like him. He's just been
Okay.
really consistent recently. I know he had a few WDs beforehand, but he proved that that wasn't too big of an issue when he performed well at Mexico. He has 7 top 40s in a row, but not much better than a top 20, I guess. So he's more of a top 40 bet. It starts at even odds for top 40 and obviously gets better the lower that you get on that. So I think that's more of a placement bet for me, but he's gained on approach and off the tee in all 7 of those events. He's been really consistent. T29 at Mexico at much higher odds. So I feel like if you loved him at Mexico on a very similar course, I feel like you got to play him here, especially in DFS. So
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, JJ Spawn is up there, won in Texas a couple of weeks ago at
yeah,
125-1. Tom Hoagie's got a lot of good narratives here.
yeah,
Ryan Palmer, I mentioned, has an unofficial course record here and plays this course quite often. He's 125-1 on FanDuel, 80-1 on DraftKings. So some good expected number value there. Luke List had a pretty good week last week.
yeah.
Matt Neesmith's been playing good. Matt Wolf popped out of nowhere last week. I'm going to give you the floor here to give me like I love my long shots, and I'm going to
Yeah.
save mine for tomorrow's little video that I do. But maybe give me one. Give me your favorite long shot this week that's going to KH Lee this thing and take it down.
Well, I don't know if he'll KH Lee, but I do like Matthew Wolf this week. I always say with
I
guys
do
like
too.
Gary Woodland, I know I'm getting you here. I know this is exactly what you wanted, right? But
Yep.
with guys like Woodland, Ricky Fowler, I said it about Matthew Wolf too. Like I've got to see something from you before, I start to play you or I start to put money on you. Otherwise, like if you continue to bet Matthew Wolf over this last year or so, you're probably, driving yourself crazy, like I said earlier. So, yeah, Wolf again, another one of those numbers. I think I'm more interested in him at next week at Southern Hills because I think he just tends to play good on these tougher courses, especially when you least expect it to. So,
I know.
um, go ahead on Wolf. You got to say
No,
something.
I have him, dude. I took Wolf in every major back in December at 125-1, except for the British Open, I think. So I have him here. I don't know why. I just felt like things were really, really trending in the fall. He actually threw that fall swing, led the PGA Tour in scoring average. Then he lost it, but he goes through these ups and downs. I
Yeah,
just still am a believer that the ceiling is there. And I've always had this belief that there is a desire and a separating factor. Like when you look at if there were an ingredients list on players, like the back of a cereal box, there's this like winning ingredient in a guy that some guys just have and some guys just don't. And he's done it his entire life. Now, has he been prolific on the PGA Tour thus far? No, but he competed in a very difficult US Open at Winged Foot. He's competed in other big time majors, a PGA championship. He competed at Torrey Pines. He won a PGA Tour event in like his first 6 months on the tour. He won all through college. So I know that it's within him. Positive things, positive signs last week, gaining 4 strokes tee to green. His first time gaining tee to green in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 starts. I would like to see a little bit more. I already have that number for next week, and you may have talked to him and me into him this week.
yeah. Again, another one of those numbers. You said it. I mean, just the win equity. I mean, do you really think? I can't imagine Brennan Todd winning any much more than I can Matthew Wolf. So, like I said, another win equity thing. Um, I think I might save it for next week at Southern Hills. I think you probably could have gotten a better number before he played well this last week, of course. But yeah, I think there's no issue with playing him this week. And he's, I don't know if, I guess, I don't know his Texas course history, but like you said, he won at Minnesota, which I think is a similar course to what we'll see this week, another TPC course too.
You're right. Yeah, TPC course with a lot of par fives that you can score on, a decent bit of water off there, but really a place that you can take advantage and leverage his strengths off the tee. Now, when you look at Fantasy National, a lot of it's going to look very red for Matthew Wolff, but the driving distance isn't, still top 3 in the field, so he still gets it out there a long way. If he can hit some fairways, really, to me, a lot of it is mental with him,
Yeah.
as he alluded to. So some positive signs, maybe a little bit of change in attitude. I think he's struggling with some things off the course, so I'm rooting for him to get it right. But good call there, Hunter. I appreciate you coming on the show. Tell everyone again where they can follow you and where they can see some more of your content.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks again for having me on, Joe. You can find me on Twitter at Huntman10. That's where I really put out a majority of my stuff. I'll put out my DFS cheat sheet on Wednesday. You can see that on Twitter. All the other content that I put out is on Fantasy Points. You can see my event and course preview that was posted today, and you can catch the replay of my early tee time live stream earlier today as well. So, yeah, thanks for having me on again, Joe. And maybe I think I'll join you on the Wolf bet this week. Hopefully we can cash a big one.
I appreciate it, man. Best of luck this week. Thanks again, Huntman10, Hunter Van Ness. Appreciate you coming on, buddy.
You bet. Thanks, man.
Talk soon. See you. All right. Good dude right there. Check him out of his stuff out over at Fantasy Points. Now I'm going to get to my best bet of the week, which I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier. Now, this is going to be brought to you by our buddies over at Fantasy Golf Pod. My boy Chad, Eric, all the guys over there. They do the Golf Guys program, coming to you live, I believe, still on Thursdays. So check their stuff out. They are huge supporters of my show. I'm supporters of them. This is my best bet of the week, brought to you by Fantasy Golf Pod. I said it earlier. I don't like going up top here, but I'm doing it this week. Justin Thomas, best bet of the week. Second in ball striking over the last 24 rounds. Opportunities gained on easy golf courses, also second. Fifth in par 5 scoring over the last 24 rounds. He's going to be able to eat these things up this week. And I mentioned the driving distance. Longer than Scotty, longer than Brooks, longer than DJ, longer than Zalatoris. He pumps it out there now for a guy of, he looks like he's 160 pounds soaking wet. Pounds the ball off the tee. I think this is a good setup. All the motivation to sort of tuck a win under his belt before getting back to that PGA Championship, trying to hoist another trophy there. Recent form trending 35th, 8th, 3rd, 33rd, 6th, 8th. He's close. He needs a decent putting week. These greens are easy. They're flat. I think he gets it done this week, and I'm taking the 12-1. Those odds 66-1. I forgot to remove that from Brian Harmon last week. Played pretty well. JT 12-1. That's my best bet of the week. I'm going to get to a quick question that I did see from Patrick earlier in the show. Hoagie or Keith Mitchell? I'm going to take Keith Mitchell, Patrick. I just had it pulled up here. Give me one quick second. Yeah, second in par 5 scoring, 19th in birdies or better gain. I know it's not Bermuda grass, but still, I think that he can really leverage his length off the tee. And Tom Hoagie, I like more on a place where he's going to be able to hit a lot of pitching wedge, hit a lot of 9-irons, hit a lot of sand wedge. He sticks those clubs close consistently, like at Pebble, like at these shorter type courses. I don't think this is necessarily that. There's always just going to slow it down a little bit. Is it going to play firmer this year? I believe so, but I still lean Keith Mitchell in that scenario. Thank you for your question. Don't forget to drop a comment. Tell me you like the show in the chat. Leave me your Twitter handle. Tell me your shirt size. I may pick you to be the winner like I did for someone last week and send you a free shirt as a token of my appreciation from the Preferred Lines podcast. Okay. What do you say we do a little final thoughts? Give me just a second. I'm going to bring up the banner here. This is brought to you by Pies Picks. Dude, they have some awesome stuff on there. You can really leverage some situations on Prize Picks if you get out in front of that. The data golf stuff where it's showing you the over-under on scoring average on a hole, because they leave them posted, right? They probably don't want me saying this, but promo code PL100 is going to get you a $100 deposit match. Please use that. Please sign up for Prize Picks. Download it in the App Store, PL100. What I was mentioning was you could check out how the hole was playing earlier in the morning and then take the over under. It's usually 4.5 on a par five. If it's playing difficult, you just take the over, you put a couple parlays in, you make some money. If it's playing easy, you take the under, you put a couple parlays in, you make some money. Take advantage of information that is out there. You might do okay on Prize Picks. $100 deposit match. That's pretty good too. That's about as good as you'll see out there. All right. Final thoughts. I love doing this segment. This is where I talk about I don't know, just stuff that's a little bit different that maybe not anyone else is talking about. If you're just here for the golf stuff, like I always say, feel free to check out now. But here are my final thoughts for this week. And it's perspective. And it's Max Homa, baby. And it's the role that the mind and your brain can play in sort of manipulating physical outcomes in your body. Max Homa, quote from Sunday after the victory, his fourth in a very short time frame. I saw $18,000 in a year. I remember feeling very, very small. No hope to make a cut. I carry that with me because I've seen it. Now, this, before I get too much into it, this is not meant to indicate that Keegan did anything wrong or improper on Sunday, but meant to cement the case of the impact of positivity, of perspective, of how the mind can really dictate how your body reacts in certain situations, how your body and your hands in golf react to stress, how your body and your approach react to anxiety, react to pressure. Your mind can send signals to your body and tells yourself how to hit these difficult up and down chip shots that he hit to a downhill lie that to tap in range. Um, Having a proper perspective and the correct mental health and ideas and positivity can really change how your body reacts in those moments. How to clutch up on the 70th hole and make birdie when things are getting close, when Keegan's in trouble. How to stripe a drive down the middle on the 72nd hole, right down the middle of the fairway under immense pressure, trying to close out a tournament. The mind is so powerful, guys, in affecting your physical ability into manifesting feelings and thoughts into real, like actual change in your body function. Excuse me. There's a couple of things that like I think of the placebo effect, of how your thoughts and how things can impact how you feel. There's also this nocebo effect. And I was talking to my wife about it that I think is very interesting. If you haven't heard about this, there was a study recently involving people taking antidepressants a couple of years ago. 26-year-old guy was in part of this antidepressant study and basically wasn't feeling good. Took the whole bottle of pills, right? SSRIs, Xanax type stuff, downed like 35 pills. Immediately after, realized what he just did, called the ambulance and said, I just took a whole bottle of pills. Please come and get me. The process of the ambulance coming to get him, his heart rate spiked outrageously. He started sweating all over. His blood pressure went way up, almost borderline convulsing, and like almost went into cardiac arrest. Like this guy almost died. Ambulance shows up. They get out and say, what did you take? Points to a bottle on the dresser, empty. The medic sees the doctor's name on the bottle, calls him and says, what is this medication? We think he overdosed on it. We need to know more about it. And the doctor said he wasn't in the group. It was a water pill. They tell this guy that, immediately he stops sweating, heart rate starts to come down, blood pressure levels. He immediately feels better. And this just like illustrates that the impact of the mind can have on your actual body. Like his body went into fight or flight mode and thought he was dying, like literally almost killed him because of something he thought that he took when he took nothing. It's the power that the mind can have on how your body actually reacts. The same can be said for the placebo effect. So that's more common which people know about, but it's basically taking nothing, but you think you're taking something that makes you feel better, makes you perform better. It has a positive effect on you. Now, whether it's something or whether it's nothing, your mind thinks it's better for you. Um, this is the same thing with spirituality. This is the same thing with positivity. This is the same thing with perspective. If you can work on your mind every day, and I try to do this, and Max is one of the reasons that I kind of got into this a couple of years ago when I heard him talk about it. But you work on it. There's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days, but the belief is there that this thing that you're doing is going to at one point have a positive impact on your physical life, on your health, on your abilities, on things that are going to happen to you positively. This is the journey that I've kind of been taking part in, and why I wanted to sort of start this segment. And this is the thing. This is, I think, is a similar path to what Max is on, and he has really embraced it by taking the time to focus on having a healthy mind, a nourished mind. It's put his God given physical abilities in a place where they can operate freely, without hesitation, without stress, without anxiety, because he knows he's good whether he hits that shot on 16 for birdie or whether he hooks it for double. He said, I'm going to make a boatload of money either way, and I'm going to go play the PGA Championship in a couple of weeks with another opportunity and another chance to win. There are going to be potholes along your path, and if you can teach your mind to react to those positively, it's going to have an effect on the physical outcome. Some thoughts on perspective, some thoughts on the power of the human mind that are pretty deep. And I think it's important that we all take a few minutes, whether it's reading a book on it, whether it's listening to this for like 3 minutes and just thinking about your own life and how the changes that you can maybe make. I think it'll have a positive effect on you. I think it has had a very positive effect on Mr. Max Homa. I wish him all the best. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much once again for checking out Preferred Lines. Make sure to like or subscribe or thumbs up this thing on the way out. I'll see y'all next week for the PGA Championship. Peace.